Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our workshop here. This presentation is about universal design. Specifically, we'll be focusing on instructional material and how you can design it universally. And I have with me here Montie. Montie has been with us for really a long time, and she's now currently the ADA project coordinator, focusing on physical accessibility. So the objective of this workshop is, as stated here, by the end of this workshop, you'll be able to recognize UNC Charlotte as a state university and recognize its legal obligation. You'll be able to claim a few of the law that supports people with disabilities and provide equal access. You'll be able to differentiate between two important terminologies: accommodation and accessibility. People are always confused what is accommodation and what is accessibility and who is responsible for this or that. You'll be able to provide examples related to physical and electronic accessibility. You'll be able also to recognize universal design as an approach for inclusiveness. We'll also provide you with some hints and tips which you will be able to use when you create content. Also, we'll show you how to use or talk about some of the accessibility shekels that are found in most modern applications. Moreover, we'll show you, I'll tell you about the assistive technology that's available in UNC Charlotte. Even hopefully, if the time allows, we will even demonstrate one of which. And this is our agenda. I will now leave it for Montie. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Khaleel said, my name is Montie, and my role is the ADA project coordinator here for the campus, and I've been with the university for almost 13 years. And my role today in this webinar is to help present and provide information on a broad scale around accessibility and why it's important, why there are legal requirements for it, and help differentiate between accommodation and accessibility. So mine's to give you a broad overview, and hopefully we'll have some interactive things to go with that. And then Khaleel is going to be able to talk about the more technical ends of how to make things accessible that are electronic. All right. So first, let's talk about legal requirements related to electronic accessibility, related to the need for accessible websites, and how our university falls under these. I'm not going to go through a lot of details of these, except to explain that Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act, as you can see, was established a long time ago, and it is monitored through the Department of Justice and the Department of Education. The intent of Section 504 and 508 is to ensure that entities that receive federal funding do not discriminate against people with disabilities. And so we certainly, as a public institution that has financial aid as well as multiple federal grants, we certainly are an institution that receives federal funding, and because of that, we fall under Section 504 and Section 508. Section 508, as you can see, came about much later than Section 504, and Section 508 deals specifically with electronic accessibility. It deals with the importance of making things accessible so that you're not discriminating against people with disabilities and keeping them from accessing electronic content. There's also the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is a civil rights law and actually has its origins in the Civil Rights Act of the early 60s. And the intent of the ADA is to protect anyone with a disability pretty much in any location against discrimination. It applies to our campus because we are a public institution. We are open to the public, but the ADA also applies to, an easy example is making sure that a restaurant has an accessible way to enter rather than just steps. For example, the ADA helps ensure that people have equal access to goods and services, and they have several titles that also apply to human resources, and so it pretty much encompasses everything. The ADA Amendments Act of 2008 is notable simply because at that time, due to a lot of court cases, the court system decided that the definition of disability really needed to be expanded. So there is, which we'll talk about in a minute, there is a federal definition of what it means to be considered disabled. And in 2008, they basically amended some of the ADA to have a broader scope to include people with different types of disabilities. So when we talk about electronic accessibility, there were several court cases that sort of ignited the need, the realization that electronic content needed to be made accessible for everyone. One of those court cases was against Arizona State University in 2009, and essentially Arizona State at that time had decided that the Kindle device was a required device, I believe, for their freshman class. So they made it a required component of courses. And at the time, the Kindle was not fully accessible for people who were blind. So people who were blind that use screen readers in order to have content read to them aloud, they were not able to access the menu of the Kindle. And then there were other components of the Kindle that they couldn't access with their screen reader. So that required them to have a person, a human, to assist them to do their coursework through the Kindle. And the problem with that is that it was not considered to be equal access. So the National Federation for the Blind brought a lawsuit against them, and that was one of a handful of cases that resulted in the federal government, the Department of Justice and the Department of Education sort of sitting up and going, okay, so we've been looking at physical access for years. We now need to really focus on electronic access, and this was one of the cases that got that rolling. So there is, as I mentioned, a federal definition of what it means to be a person with a disability, and I won't go through this whole thing except to say that oftentimes the determination of whether or not the person meets the definition of having a disability relies with medical documentation. And it's, I think, important to know that of all the people that have a disability, a large majority of people have a disability that is completely hidden. You would never know that they had a disability by simply looking at them. So, given that, let's try using our annotation tools, which again are at the top of the slide on the left-hand side. And if you would, try, use one of your tools and write in this box that you see who you think might have a disability on our campus. We're all on the same line of thinking today, which is great. So, yeah, visitors, students. Again, keeping in mind that we have, of course, tons of visitors to our campus for tons of reasons every day. And it's important to make sure that they, too, are protected against being discrimination on the basis of disability. Parents, that's another good one. And we've seen more of that in the last few years. Parents who are here who need either accessibility for things or even an accommodation while they're here. Okay, great. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference between accommodation and accessibility. They're two terms that are very easily confused, and hopefully I can provide some clarification. An accommodation for a person with a disability is very individualized, customized, and on our campus, for students, is provided solely through the Office of Disability Services. So if you are faculty and you have a student who talks about having a disability, talks about needing an accommodation, the accommodation is not anything that you are expected to determine or to know. And in fact, we encourage faculty not to provide accommodations for their students without the verification through our office. And that's done in the form of a letter of accommodation. And so the process briefly is that students submit medical documentation to our office, to Disability Services. We review that medical documentation based on the federal definition of disability to determine if they meet that level of being disabled. And from there, we work with them individually on their accommodations. Accommodations can be very, very different for every student. In fact, you could have 5 students with ADHD, for example, and they could receive very different accommodations because it's about how the accommodation, about how the disability impacts them as an individual in the classroom. And just like many things, disability can impact people in very, very different ways. So with accommodation, it's not anything that you are expected to know what to do or how to provide. It is solely through the Office for Disability Services. For faculty and staff, we have a similar process that happens through our Human Resources Department. But it is, again, a process that an individual goes through. These are some examples of accommodations. As you can see, some of them are kind of specific. There are some people that require very specific assistive technology. The Smart Nav photograph that you see down at the bottom allows a person who cannot use their arms to navigate a computer with a small chip on their forehead, and there's even a retinal scanner type technology as well. The CCTV that you see above it is certainly a device that's very specific for an individual. Class notes, extra time for exams, things like that are a specific accommodation approved for a specific individual. So now let's talk about the other side of the coin. Let's talk about accessibility. Accessibility is different in that it's designed to provide equal access and opportunities for everyone. It's not customized for a specific individual. And what's really important to think about is that accessibility is everyone's responsibility on our campus. In other words, if there's a classroom, an easy example is a classroom where the door into the classroom is not wide enough for a person that uses a wheelchair. Now, fortunately, we don't have that situation on our campus that I'm aware of. But if we did, that would be something that is not accessible for the person. They paid the same tuition. They deserve to be in the class as much as any other student. If they can't actually get into the class, that would be a problem. So here are some examples of accessibility: ramps, elevators. Our EduRoam system can be accessed by people who are blind. Even a microphone in class arguably is a form of accessibility because it certainly might benefit people who are hard of hearing, but oftentimes a microphone in a classroom, depending on the environment, of course, can be really helpful for all the students. All right, we're going to play a little game now, again, hopefully using the annotation tools. I'm going to show you a couple of slides, and if you'll take a look at this location on the photograph, and tell me whether or not you think that this area is accessible or not. And you can use your pen or highlighter and just circle something, or you can write something, whatever you prefer. Yes, that's great. You know, the part on the right is a good one because it actually is really hard to see. So I think you've figured out the main issue here. This is an area near the Cone Center, near the Cone Center loading dock. Yes, there we go again. That's and the main issue in this picture is the trash dumpster. It is blocking the curb cut on the other side there, and the issue with that is there's a few issues with that. You can't really see it very well, but the curb cut, because it's white, it ends and starts to go back up as a curb there. So it limits the amount of space that a wheelchair user would have to get up onto that side of the sidewalk. The dumpster is blocking that. Another issue is someone who is blind. There's a very complex process that people who are blind go through in order to navigate our campus or anywhere. It involves orientation and mobility training from experts in the community, but they basically map out their routes for every semester. And so if this were part of a normal, regular route for someone who's blind, who suddenly one day there's a dumpster in their path, they could easily run right into it. And so obstruction like that is definitely a big issue on our campus. And then the other parts that were circled, arguably, like this area over here, it's really dark, it's hard to see over there. And this area here can be tough because it sort of protrudes in some ways out into the sidewalk. So if you're on a plaza like this, it could be, and you're blind, or you use a wheelchair, that requires a little bit of tricky navigation around that. That's great. Okay. What about this area? These are stairs, so obviously we know that these are not something that a person who uses a wheelchair would use. But what issues do you think are present in terms of accessibility with these stairs? These stairs are lacking contrast striping. These are interior stairs. Yep, great. Oh, that line looks much better than mine. These are marble stairs, and they are interior stairs. And in poor lighting, they certainly can look to anybody. It can be very hard to differentiate between the stairs, between the risers. They are also, because with the lack of a contrast stripe, they also can be slippery. Some contrast stripes that you see have sort of a grit to them. They have a grain, which is also designed to prevent people from slipping, and it doesn't have that as well. So these type of materials, once they get wet, can be extremely slippery, and sometimes slippery if they're not wet. So these are issues that really could be problematic for anybody, but certainly for people who have low vision, who see very little, even with glasses. What about this location? In case you're not sure what these are what they call door actuators. And they're designed to open up doors for people who might not have the strength to open up a door or the dexterity with their hands to grip a door handle. But what is the problem here? Yes, yep. So one problem, as you pointed out, is there's a bench there. So that would make it really difficult for someone in a wheelchair to be able to reach across that bench and hit the paddle, but also, as the blue arrows indicate, it's very high. These door actuators are very high off the ground. So not only do you have to try to reach over the bench, but then up. And if you already sit in a wheelchair, your reach range, if your arms are fully functional, is limited, and it would be for any of us. So this is in a vestibule at Woodward, and these are just mounted way too high and don't make a lot of sense. And not to mention, if somebody were sitting here doing work, that's another obstacle to reaching the buttons. Great, okay. So next I'm going to just play a video about captions. Captions are a really important part of electronic accessibility. They currently are considered an accommodation and a form of accessibility. It's one of the few things that sort of walks both sides of that. And this is a comedian who I discovered fairly recently, and I think she does a great job talking about captions. But now you do have the link, and if you'd like to look at it later, Jessica Marie Flores is the person speaking, and she answers, she has several videos around experiences being deaf, and helps answer a lot of questions that I think people have. She addresses a lot of assumptions that people make as well about the deaf community. But the captions one, I think, is extremely helpful and was worthy of sharing. So I've talked a little bit about the laws around accessibility and accommodation that protect people with disabilities. And we've talked a little bit about the difference between accommodation and accessibility. And it kind of all comes around to the concept of universal design, which can be challenging to accomplish, but is very important as we move forward in our tech-savvy world to make sure that as we design things, whether it's electronic content, teaching physical structures, that we design them in a way that works to the greatest extent possible for everyone. All right, so I'm going to now turn this over to Khaleel, who's going to get into some detail around how to make your content accessible.
Thank you, Katie. So to talk about instructional design and accessibility and give you some of these tips, I'd like just to kind of review with you that we use different type of media to represent our data. For example, sometimes we publish a paper, or maybe we write a book, or sometimes we create a small pamphlet. All of this media have like a common characteristics. Like, for example, you use a font or use an image, or sometimes you will use decorated with some lines and background and so forth. Each of these elements that will be used has some tips to make it more accessible and more reachable for people with disabilities and everyone, to make it more universal design. So I'll start here with the fonts. And you can see in the screen there are many lines here. Each one has a different font. Now, using your annotation tool, please mark the one that you think that is more accessible. And maybe you want to X or cross the one that is not accessible, based on your opinion. Okay, so we have few. Okay, so let's start bottom up. Okay, thank you. This is good. So the first font here, okay, this is the most accessible, Arial? You think so? Yes, okay, cool. Okay, so down all the way, we can see the Schiller font. This is like a decorative font. And normally this is not accessible because it is just difficult for people with disability, especially those who have low vision, to read it. And if it is zoomed in, it will be difficult even to read because it could become blurred. Then we have the font that is brush script. Please do not use brush script. Brush script or handwritten scripting is also difficult to read, even with people with disability or no disability. It's just sometimes difficult to differentiate the letters, especially with a word like illustration. The next one is called the flex titling. A flex titling is a font that it is a little bit compressed. It is all full capital letter. And that is the issue. The capitalization sometimes is not easy to read. Unless if you are using a title with large fonts, this is maybe acceptable. But inside the body of your document, it's not recommended to use it. The next one is career new. Career new has a characteristic that the size between characters are equal. It is called monospace. So that sometimes makes it difficult to read because of the spacing. For example, you can see right here that the space between the comma and the C is really large when for example, the space between N and the question mark is really small, and so forth. You can see it's all equal spaces. Though we cannot say that it is 100% that is not accessible, but we will not recommend that. Now I'll move on to Times New Roman. Times New Roman is a very common soft font that is almost used with many standards like ABA. Nevertheless, it has a problem with these extensions or flared extensions or strokes. These strokes can make it difficult for the end user to differentiate between letters. Not only that, sometimes, especially if you photocopy multiple times your document, these little flares will go away and it will damage the font, and it will be difficult to read or convert to OCR, for example. I'll move on to Arial. Arial is considered a font that is accessible. It comes from a sans serif family. Although it is accessible, the one that is more accessible is really Verdana. And simple reason, you can see the letters here, ILL. They look different. You can distinguish between them, unlike the ILL in Arial. That's why Verdana is a font we recommend that you use, especially when you are writing for your students or writing a paper or an email or so forth. And I have here a reference that you can read about Verdana or other fonts and what problems could be involved or included when you use those fonts. Now I just want to, before going to the next slide, I want to tell you that each one of those are using the same font size, and specifically this is font size 20. Okay. Nevertheless, you can see that this line became very large, like very long. This font is larger than this one. Verdana is larger than Times New Roman. So what comes next is really the font size. And before it comes, so we have two groups here. The first group is sans serif, that is Verdana and Arial. Then we have the fonts that you should avoid as much as possible, which is the flared extensions like in Times New Roman, cursive, like for example the brush script, monospace like Career New, and fantasy fonts like the Scheller. Now moving on to the size, you can see here there are different sizes of that Verdana. I'm using Verdana here. If you'd like to use your annotation tool and mark the one that you think is more accessible, you can check mark next to it, or cross the one that you don't like, and so forth. Okay, there we go. So we have font 24, size 24, 16 is also acceptable. Now remember, this is like a presentation. Normally it is like it should be filling your screen, and that's why fonts that is larger will be used in normally in the presentations. But when it comes to your document, like in normal document that you distribute, it's recommended that you use font size 12 points or larger. Now remember again, depending on the font you select, you probably will have to select that font that is smaller in size. For example, in health, if you are using Times New Roman or Arial, 12 is really good. If you are using Verdana, and I'm talking in a normal document with, like for example, publication, something that you will publish or an article, if you are using Verdana, probably you want to use 10 or maybe 11, because Verdana naturally is larger. So this is about fonts. The next I have here is related to color. Now there is a common practice that is sometimes used, that faculty, for example, will say, okay, questions marked with red are mandatory. Using this kind of annotation is not recommended, because a person who's blind or color blind will not be able to use or see the color. That's why you should use an alternative indication. Okay, that for example you can use an asterisk and say, okay, questions that has an asterisk are mandatory, or you can make it explicit and just write mandatory next to the question. The next that is related to color and contrast is the foreground and background color. So I'm going to click next here, and there are three bullet points, and I want you to mark the one that you think that is more accessible. So one of these three is accessible, yes, this one, definitely, because you see the green color has a very, it is darker and the background is white. Unlike, I will mark this actually, this area, if you notice, somehow there's something written, but it is with very low contrast. That makes it difficult to read, even impossible. This one is something in between, but with someone who has low vision, they will have difficulty reading it, especially if the font is really small. So this is about the color and the contrast. The thing that also next that will help you make your document accessible is using styles. Styles are used for headings and titles. For example, heading level 1, 2, and so forth, and the title, left side title, and so forth. These headings should be readable by the screen reader. And what happens, the screen reader will listen. This is a screenshot for some headings from a website. The person who is blind knows those shortcuts and will be able to navigate your document or your website just by listing them. Okay, so they can just list them and they can navigate among them. I would like just to point, what we would like to do is to give them the same experience that someone with no disability has, someone can see. For example, if you have a newspaper, you will not read line by line until you reach to the topic you want to read. Rather, you just focus on the headings. You'll jump from heading to heading, then when you come to the heading that you want, you'll start reading. And this cannot be done unless if you use styles. So when you use styles, there will be this kind of list, and the student will be able to navigate through them. Then they will click enter and they will start reading underneath. Even if there is 100 pages, using the heading will speed up their experience and it will help them navigate quicker. So this is about using the styles. I have also a screenshot, next one here, that show how the styles look like. In Microsoft Word, you'll find them in the ribbon. There will be heading level 1, heading level 2. Once you select heading level 2, heading level 3 will appear. The good news, this blue color and the font are customizable. You can change them and customize them in a way that meets your desire or meets the standards you are using. Another screenshot is related to Canvas. You can see that we have header level 2, header level 3, and 4. In Google Document as well, you will find that there is heading level 1, heading level 2, and heading level 3, and so forth. Now, this is available almost in every modern software, even in design, for example, or if you use Publisher or any other application, or for example, Pages in Apple computers. You will find this ready-made settings that you can use and make your document accessible. Now, one of the things that is recommended that when you use heading level 1, you should not use it more than once in a page. Why? Because this heading level 1 represents actually the page title. So when you repeat heading level 1 in one page, for someone who's blind, they could think that maybe they clicked the wrong keyboard key and move them to another page. They will be confused. Am I in the same page or did I click the wrong key? That's why you should use the heading level 1 once only, then underneath it, heading level 2, and if there is subtitle, then this is becoming heading level 3, and so forth. So it is really a hierarchical relation that you provide for your document. Now, we always talk about universal design. One of the benefits that happens when you use styles, that you will be able to create, for example, your table of content. There is no way that you can create or automate that if you do not use styles. Styles knows the titles and will be able immediately to create that table of content. Even if you do changes afterward, for example, you remove paragraphs or even sections, and simply you will go to that table and update the page numbers. Now I have a question for you, and you see here in Microsoft Word we have heading level 1. In Google Document we have heading level 1. However, in Canvas, this is heading level 2. Where is heading level 1 in Canvas? Can anybody note or figure out what's going on? Why Canvas does not provide heading level 1? You can use your annotation tool, or you can use the chat and type it. Okay, so simply you see this box here is the title of your article or your Canvas page. This is where heading level 1. So this is how Canvas enforces heading level 1. So this is about using styles. I'll move on. Now, it is very important to use alternative text. Now, these alternative texts are used with images and pictures. For example, graphic, tables, charts. Why we use it? Because the screen reader does not read images. They will see the image. If it doesn't associate it, if it is not associated with alternative text, it will say blank, or it will read the file name, which is as long as it could be. So the screen reader will not be able to read it, but it will access the alternative text and read it for someone who's blind. You should be able to use, you should always use appropriate alternative text. And what we mean here by appropriate alternative text is really something that relates to your context. We normally suggest that you ask yourself two questions. Why did you use this image? What do you want to convey for your students? It should be simple, easy, and to the topic. So in another word, an image could have multiple alternative text depending on why you are using that image. I have a small practice here. We have an image here. This is one of the buildings in UNC Charlotte. Using your annotation tool, maybe the T for text, you can just click on the T and type down here. Suggest something, suggest an alternative text for this image. So let's assume you are talking about this bike that is next to the building. This is an alternative text. Let's assume you are talking about the blocks used by this building. This is another alternative text. Let's assume you are talking about the stairs and there is no stripe on them. This is another alternative text. So there could be many of them. For now, and just for the purpose of this presentation, since our office is in the Fretwell building, so my alternative text would be Fretwell building where DS is located. So let's give you another example and give you another chance to participate. This is another image. I guess everybody knows that. I hope so. So this is SAC building, and we can see people gathered for a reason. If you have not attended this festival, it is the International Festival. Again, you can use the annotation tool. You can use the T for text, and you type your text, and you click enter, or just type anywhere else, and it will show to everybody. So far, nothing has happened. Okay, so again, it depends on the text context of your topic. If you are writing, let's assume you are writing how you select a location for your festival. Okay, a building, a space, a garden. This is an alternative text. If you are talking about just how people are gathered, this is an alternative text. If you are talking about how you can prepare for festivals by preparing tents, balloons, and so forth, this is another alternative text. We have here a contribution fair in student activity center. Yes, this is a good alternative text. Just student activity center. This is another good alternative text. The one we used here says people gathered for the international festival at SAC. So this is why I used it, just because people are using that. This is maybe a topic that was written about SAC building, or about how people are gathered, or about activities in UNC Charlotte. So there are many reasons that could be depend. You just ask your question, why did I use that image, and what I want people to learn when they see it. The next that is common is tables. You know, we use tables to present our data. Okay, we can see here, for example, these are programs provided by specific channels at a specific time. All right, but this case table is not properly marked up or not properly prepared. The reason, even visually, it is just difficult to track, for example, A to Z, what time or which channel. You have to go all the way up to read the time, all the way left to read about the channel. So there should be an enhancement that provides a good, appealing vision. Also, there are few settings that will help also the screen reader learn about your table. So I have here another image where it looks better. Also, you should mark the header row and column header. So these are called header row and column header. When you mark them properly, the screen reader will be able to read and explain, for example, that elementary is a program presented by CBS at 10 o'clock. Okay, so this is how important to use the header row and the column header. Now, at this moment, in this presentation, the time will not be enough really to present or show you how to do it. But we normally provide a workshop where we give you a Microsoft Word document, and it has a table that is not accessible, just like the one here, and we work together in making that accessible. So we show you where are the icons, where are the tools, and what exactly needs to be clicked to make the table accessible. The next I have here in my slides related to the built-in accessibility checker. Built-in accessibility checker is now available almost in most modern applications. You built your document using Adobe InDesign, Microsoft Word, PDF file, and there must be like a tool that helps you determine if your document is ready to be distributed. Is it accessible? If it is yes, go ahead and distribute. And I have here just a few slides that will help also, because really it is a great tool to use. In Microsoft Office, you just go to File, check for issues, then you check for accessibility as it says here. And the result will be appearing next in a small palette. It will show you the errors, and it will give you more explanation and down all the way. Why is that wrong? Why that is not accessible? And how to fix it, and at whom it will impact, which is really good. So you learn about your errors, you fix them, and you work on them. I have here another slide in how to check accessibility in Adobe Acrobat Pro. So simply you go to accessibility. It is a tool that you'll find all the way to the right, and you select full check, and this will give you a result as well. For example, you can see that there is a title missing. If it is missing alternative text, it will tell you. If it is correct, it will tell you. If there's something good, this is what I like about this report in comparison with Microsoft Word. So this is how it looks like in Microsoft Word, and how does it look like in Acrobat Pro. Now the good news, Canvas also provides accessibility checker. Okay, so simply in your HTML editor, okay, you will find all the way to the right this little symbol, okay, with this little man. And when you click on it, it will check all the errors in your document or your page, and it will tell you, okay, what's wrong. For example, this was pointing to an image, and it says that it requires an alternative text. The good thing about that you can type your alternative text immediately in the text box here, and click apply. And if it is a decorative image, you just click on the decorative image, and what happens here, the screen reader will skip the image. It will not annoy anybody. Normally, students, especially, or users who are blind, when they come across an image that is there, that screen reader will tell them that there's an image, and maybe it will read the file name, then they will become so confused, and they will become more curious. What is that image? Why it was used? Why it is there? So if it is a background image, you really don't want to annoy someone who's blind about it. So simply you can click here, decorative image, and the screen reader will skip it. So this is how it looks like in Canvas. The next for you I have here is about the assistive technology that we use in University of North Carolina at Charlotte. There are three sets of applications that we ask IT personnel to make sure that it is installed in every computer that is used by a student. This includes computer labs, classroom, the station where the instructor uses, the library, computers, meetings, computers for students. As long as it will end up in the hand of the students, then we need this assistive technology. This is how we make sure that our computers are accessible. The first application is called JAWS Screen Reader, that reads for students everything on the screen. So it will tell them about the file, edit, share. It will tell them how to navigate and so forth. And it has hundreds of shortcuts. Normally students who are blind or users who are blind remember or memorize those shortcuts, and it will give them list of links, list of heading, list of images and so forth, and this is how they navigate quickly and fast. The next software is called Magic. Magic is software that magnifies. It magnifies screen to the user. It also has some other features. For example, it will provide negatives or positives. It will provide different type of arrow or icon and things like that to help them see better. So it is used mostly by people who are low vision. The next software is Read and Write Code. Read and Write Code is used by people with disability or no disability. Simply, as the name says, it helps with reading and writing as well. It reads the images. It can convert the image to a text and read it to the user. It helps with mind mapping. It helps with research. Help with bibliography and so forth. The good thing about Read and Write Code that it is available in software.uncc.edu, and it is available for every user in campus. You can use it at home, in your personal computer, you can use it at your office, you can use it at the lab. The next here I prepared for you is a quick demo of how JAWS look like, and for that I will have to share my screen. Okay, so this is my screen. I'm going to launch JAWS.
JAWS Professional Synergy Basic M_P Group Server.
Okay, normally JAWS works very well with IE.
Enter. Internet Explorer.
Okay, it is still loading.
Internet Explorer left.
If IE does not work and we know that it is obsolete, it's gone away, then they use Firefox.
Synergy Basic.
Okay, so that as we just so bad. Let's try again.
IE and enter. Internet Explorer.
Okay, there we go. So this is our site. I'm not going to go to another website, or actually it's just go to DS. So this is our website.
Disability Services vertical bar Office of Disability Services vertical bar UNC Charlotte. Page has 2 regions, 12 headings and 39 links.
So you see that the screen reader announced how many links are available and how many headers are available. Then the user normally either they will use the arrow keys, go down line by line, or the B for paragraph.
Same page link, skip the main content.
So this is to help them jump, and you can see it is reading text that is not visual. It is made specifically for screen reader, like the one we just heard. And if I click the space bar, it will jump immediately to Office of Disability Services.
Space, Office of Disability Services, heading level 1. Page has 2 regions, 12 headings and 39 links.
So you see it announced that it is Office of Disability Services and that it is heading level 1. And if I click another H,
Disability Services new online system for students and faculty, heading level 2.
So it will jump to the next heading level. And if I click another 2,
heading level 2. Contact us, heading level 2.
So this is how they jump from heading to heading. They can even have a list of headings by clicking the insert F6.
Heading list dialog. Heading list view. Disability Services office hours :3, 9 of 12. To move the item, use the arrow keys.
And you see it explains how to use the keyboard. So if I click the arrow key, I go up, for example.
Access for visitors and students at public campus events :3.
It will read for them each one, and not only that, if I click the shortcut, for example, C, if I click just the C in the keyboard, it will jump to the first heading that has the letter C.
C, contact us :2.
So this is how quickly they can jump from heading to heading, especially if they are familiar with the page or the. This works, by the way, in websites, and it works also with documents and PDF files. So it is just the same commands. Another shortcut.
Contact us, heading links list dialog. List view. Disability and unclaimed 25 of 39. To move the item, use the arrow keys.
So you can see here, this is a list of links, and this is how they can jump from link or from page to page. It is always recommended to provide a meaningful hyperlink for your links. Don't use something that is long. You can see we are trying as much as possible. For example, we used to say, for example, October 15, click here to go to the workforce recruitment. Well, that is not good, because you will have to provide the HTTP :// and so forth, and this is going to be long, and the screen reader will read it all. And instead, always use hyperlink, and that will be very good. So I believe we are running out of time. I'm going to close the
with JAWS dial. Office of Disabilities.
Okay, so this is about how just one of the assistive technology we use here in campus. At the end of our workshop, just to remind you, there is an upcoming workshop. It's about 6 hours, 3 hours for each day. We recommend highly that you register for this workshop. We made this workshop we are charging faculty members. We'd like for them to learn about this little features that can enhance their document and make it more accessible and more universal design. So this upcoming one, it is also organized by CTL. In conclusion, these always universal design will help make your document more inclusiveness for everybody. Make sure you use accessible features. Make sure you use styles and alternative text. Use higher contrast. Make sure you add captions to your video, and also make sure that you use this statement in your syllabus, and make sure that you have the correct phone number for our office when you distribute your syllabus. And this is it for our workshop. Thank you for your time. Please don't hesitate to post your question or even email us, either Katie or I. Thank you. I'll return it back to Lynn.
Thank you.